Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Sultan.
I'm Katsia.
And we're the Hubbards. Today we're thinking of talking to you guys about mental health. We're talking about mental health stigma, what it's been like exploring our own mental health as Black people, Black millennials, and maybe have some recommendations for some good podcasts and books that have been helpful to us in our journey and helpful to those we know. So that's really the topic and agenda for today. Yeah, any thoughts, baby?
About
that? Was that comprehensive?
Yeah,
Okay.
That was good to me.
Yeah, okay. Well, cool. Well, you want to talk about some of your experiences, or should I jump into some of
Sure, yeah. I can talk about my experience in mental health and...
Maybe we can define what we mean by that.
What do you mean?
I don't know.
Yeah, sure, you can do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what we mean by that is basically our thought life, our emotional life, and really areas regarding our relationships. So just kind of our integrated life as human beings and our emotional well-being and our the health of our thought life. And so oftentimes when we think about mental health, we're thinking about our emotions and our thoughts and how that plays a role in all areas of our lives. Yeah, so things like stress, anxiety, depression, trauma, these things are all related to our thoughts and feelings, and so those are aspects of our mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's kind of loosely what we mean by that.
So I grew up in a Haitian household. My parents were born and raised in Haiti. They're immigrants that came to America right before I was born. So raised in a Haitian household, living in America. So living as a Haitian American. Living in both cultures. Haitian culture very much present at home, and a lot of things I learned from the food and language, and then American culture from things, TV and going to school. And so mental health, living, I feel like I can speak for most Haitians, but it's not every Haitian.
Sure.
At least Haitian American, as a Haitian millennial. Living in America, mental health is not really brought up. In mental health, I guess also living in a Christian household, a Haitian Christian household, I think some of those things like depression, anxiety, or even some mental illnesses were just seen as maybe either curses or things that, I don't know, like
demonic, maybe
something demonic,
some
maybe
demonic influences, or someone's lost their mind,
or like prayer will fix it all,
Mm-hmm.
and so growing up feeling some sad feelings, I never really saw much of sadness in my household. So crying wasn't something that I seen much. As a kid, you do cry, but as I grew older, like going into middle school, more so in high school, I didn't feel comfortable speaking about my feelings, especially speaking about feelings of, how I felt sad, whether it's how I view myself, and how I felt other people view myself. And so because of that, I think I kept a lot of things in. I never really understood what mental health was. I might have heard it in school, and I've heard of depression or anxiety or other mental illnesses, but I never felt that it was, I guess, a part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And so
that you had mental health.
That I had
something called
mental health, or that went through anything like anxiety or depression. I felt like that wasn't a part of me. And so it was, I don't know, I think growing up, middle school and high school, and in college, I really didn't realize like some of these deep-rooted thoughts and feelings I had about myself were mostly dealt with how my family raised me, how feelings and emotions were seen in the household, but also my personal experiences in life. And so it was just very closed in, you know. And wasn't really open until college, and I think more so aware of what mental health was post-college, to be, you know, frank and honest. I think I understood some of my feelings. I understood some of my thoughts. Did not know where they came from. Some I did, but it was something that I never thought that I felt like I needed to work on. And so it was very hard. You know, I wished living in this Haitian Black family that it was talked about, but I think it was something that was kind of scary to talk about. And they've never really talked about with their own parents, so it was just this constant cycle from their parents, back from their parents, you know, just constant cycle of not bringing it up and not mentioning it.
Why do you think no one mentioned it?
I think part of the Haitian culture, and I think part of Black culture itself too, I think like strength is seen, and so emotions such as sadness, yes, is not so, I guess, welcome per se or seen per se, because you had to be strong. And you had to be strong because of these experiences, you know, that, you know, people like my parents have gone through, from moving to a different country, not knowing the language, you know. There was a lot that they had to, you know, do for themselves to build their family. And I think very similarly to a lot of Black Americans here today, you know, and also, you know, immigrants from other cultures, people who are Black. So
yeah, sure. I can definitely. Did you have any other things?
Nothing right now. I mean, there's a lot that else I could speak on, but
yeah, but
you can talk.
Good kind of intro to it. Sure. I think for me, like, I've got some similarities to you, sweetie, in regards to, like, you know, family of origin, like thoughts and beliefs about how to talk about mental health, and like how you ought to display your emotions or not display them, like rules about that. Within my kind of family upbringing with just kind of a Black American cultural experience, mental health wasn't something that was oftentimes discussed. And I always found that to be strange, because I was always like acutely aware of my emotions. And as a man, that was something that was like, that violated some gender norms within my own household. And so I was kind of the oddball out in that I expressed my emotions, I talked, I, you know, was very cognizant of those things, but at times I would get that feedback of being too sensitive or this or that, and so would get a lot of communication to me, you know, direct oftentimes and sometimes indirect, that, hey, chill out with that, you know, let that roll off of your back, and, you know, so on and so forth. But especially, you know, within my household, especially, you know, some Black men in my household, expressing emotion wasn't, you know, something that really happened, except for like maybe joy or laughter, humor, anger, frustration. Sadness was not a thing, and I think it's because of that perception that means you're weak or you're soft.
And I think that's a hard emotion to
experience.
Yes.
I'd say too for many Black men, but certainly not all. there's like this gendered component where some will think that to cry means that you're being feminine or you're being weak or soft, and those are being ascribed to ascribed to women. And so there's some aspect of like culture there that has some sexist roots to it too. And so like to cry is to be like, it's like opposite of being a man, and so it's, you know, some weird things there. But also, like, if you're having issues with like anxiety or depression or something like that, that would be something that would be solved through prayer. Would be kind of the idea from, you know, my cultural background and that sort of thing. And so, you know, as a kid, as someone who has dealt with a lot of trauma, I did have some exposure to therapy as a kid, but it was always very brief and insubstantial. It was like, see a therapist for a session. It wasn't anything that I could really speak of. And no one else in my family saw a therapist. And so it wasn't something that was still really, I don't want to say it wasn't accepted, but it wasn't something talked about or practiced in the first 18 years, you know, of my life. That stigma, I think, was there too, and many black people don't like to talk about their family business and put that out there, you know, so it's also like, you're going to pay someone and tell them stuff going on with your family, and so that was something that was kind of, you know, unusual. For me, some of this background, a lot of this background pushed me into having some real interest in psychology, because I've always thought, like, emotions are super important. I just felt the intensity of those emotions, and that they had a real impact in the way I lived my life and saw myself and saw other people. And when reading scripture, I saw that God had emotions, and I was like, well, why is it bad for me to express sadness, but God can express sadness, or me to express anger, but God, or for God to express anger, but I can't, and we're created in His image. So there was some confusion there, seeing people in Scripture express emotions, but why can't I? You know, and this is the Word of God. So there was some disconnect, and so a large part of that kind of brought me to exploring psychology as an academic discipline and then as a career, you know, and pursuing training as a psychologist. So. Yeah. Maybe we can talk a little bit about our experiences, like, you know, looking up a therapist or having a therapist, and, you know, has that been helpful? Or maybe talk a little bit about maybe one way it's been helpful for us individually and one way it's been helpful to us as a married couple.
I looked into therapy more so recently. I guess I want to say I thought about it pre-pandemic, but not really. I think it was definitely during the pandemic. And I think because there's just a lot of changes happening with my life, like with work, I started travel nursing, and you know, just switching jobs and moving to a different area, although fun, but can be very lonely. And I was just in this rut for a while, feeling very anxious, feeling very doubtful about myself. It was just a rough time, and so I started to look into therapy. One great resource that helped me find a therapist was the website Therapy for Black Girls, and you can look up a therapist in your area, which you have to look up a therapist that's licensed within your state. And there's some therapists are licensed in a couple different states, so that helps. But it'll tell you where they're licensed in, but you put in your area code or your city or your state, and you can look up therapist. You can look up, you know, how long they've been therapists, and in Therapy for Black Girls, they do give you like a good description of like kind of themselves. I mean, if you want to know more, you can shoot them an email, or you can do a short free consultation, 15-minute phone call, where you can learn more about them and how they construct therapy. I think for
That's
me,
for that therapist.
for that therapist.
Sure.
And you get like a little gist of their personality. I think that kind of helps as well. I think like searching for therapists can definitely be hard.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to find someone that you'll mesh with, and this will be someone that you expose a lot of yourself with and be vulnerable, which is not easy, especially if you're not used to it.
Yeah,
And
a lot of strength to do that.
and with a stranger if that. But that's a good website for sure. You can literally Google like therapist or psychologist.
Psychology Today.
Yeah, and Google, and you can find a lot with Psychology Today as well.
Yeah.
And with my experience with therapy, it's definitely have been like an up and down journey for myself. I think I'm learning more about, what I need and growth. If I have a goal in mind, like it's hard for me to do the work for myself, at least in this season. I think it has been in the past as well. And I need like a little bit more push, or I need like more activities to do outside of my therapy sessions. And I think
To keep the work going.
to keep the work going.
Yeah.
And you should be doing that, but
Yeah.
it is hard. I think like homework or activities like journaling consistently will help. And so I learned that for me, I need that in order to push myself to grow. And so I've learned that that's something that I need. And so I think like, your first therapist that you look up or your first person that you work with may not be the person for you. And that definitely wasn't for me for the first time. I had someone that was just a little irresponsible. Their company was a little disorganized. And I saw that. I gave them a couple chances, but then I was like, this is not for me. I need structure. And I need, a goal in mind and someone to help me strive for that goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, baby. Yeah, well said.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me in my adult life, I actually haven't had much therapy, but in this season, the past couple of years, I've worked with 2 therapists. The first one was quite brief, and this current season, I'm working with a licensed professional counselor. And it's been a really helpful experience. He's an older black man, probably in his late to mid 60s. And really, for me, I've been working on having healthy coping strategies that honor God, my wife, and myself, and other neighbors in my life. While also moving towards achieving some of my own goals to move forward in some of the goals and aspirations that I have and we have, for our life. Mm-hmm. And not being hindered by stress or automatic negative thoughts that come into the mind, or anxiety or depressed mood and things like that really can hinder my quality of life and my productivity as well. And so it's been super helpful to just talk with someone openly about some of my concerns and issues and things like that, and receive some positive support. One thing that I'm interested in exploring in the future is looking at some of those resources again, like Psychology Today or what have you, and try to find some black psychologists. The field of psychology is overwhelmingly white, but there are black psychologists out there who can be really helpful with treating some of the different concerns and issues that are mental health related in our lives. And like Ketsia said, finding a therapist who really works well with you can take some time. A lot of the research actually suggests that the most important thing for you to really be mindful of when thinking about finding a therapist is, that you find someone and connect with that person, and that you feel connected to that person, that you feel that you've got a good, strong alliance with that person to do the work. And that's the best predictor of success in therapy, achievement of your goals, and reduction in severe mental health issues that you might come to therapy with. And so that can be really helpful. One other aspect of that question was what's one way therapy has helped us individually, and then what's one way it's helped us as a married couple. I guess I can do my shot with those. Mm-hmm. So my first one is that therapy, has helped me further accept some of the things that I can't change, and letting go of some of those things I can't change, and to live a less enmeshed life with other people, and to really walk into a greater sense of individuality and the freedom that brings. And one way that it's helped me as a spouse too is to better cope with stress, and to be more proactive. That what do I need to do in a given day, in a given week, in a given season, to meet some of my needs, to address some of the anxiety or depressed mood that I might experience, so that I can bring my fullest self in my marriage, and to be present. Mm-hmm. So that's been something that's really, really been helpful. Mm-hmm. What about you, sweetie?
What's been helpful, or how has therapy has helped me?
As an individual, and then as a wife?
I think it's made me more aware of some of my deep-rooted thoughts and beliefs, either about myself or about others, that has always, I don't want to say always been there, but that has been there for many, many years. Mm-hmm. That I felt like within the past year has been exacerbated. These feelings and thought about myself or others or things. And so I feel like it has made me more aware of my deeper thoughts and feelings about myself and others. And because it's made me more aware, I feel that I can actually work on those things. Yeah. About myself, and so I have a lot of work to do. Me too. And so it's going to take a while. If I work hard at it, if I'm not actively working hard at it, I'm just going to be in the same place that I've been. Yeah. And so it's going to take me a while, but to grow out and to actually know the truth and believe in that truth. And how it's helped me in my marriage, I think I don't know, I think it probably helps me think of things differently, and so approaching you, or approaching how I am as a wife in our marriage, I think has helped.
Wouldn't you say one way that therapy has helped you individually and as a spouse is learning to advocate maybe for some of your needs, or voicing some of the feelings that you're having, and what you need in that moment, if you need some space, or if you're well, I need to listen to my affirmations, or...
I think so. I think I'm still learning, day by day, what I need at that time. I think, too, with my emotions, a lot of times I don't understand them, or sometimes I don't understand them in the moment. Mm-hmm. So I have to stop to process, what is actually going on?
Yes. That's hard work, especially, coming from a background where that wasn't practiced.
Right. And so Yeah, I've definitely learned how to advocate for my needs and what I need during that time.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. We may have some more conversations about mental health in the future. And maybe some of that can be more about some of our experiences. Maybe, we can, spend some time talking about therapy in particular if anyone has any questions related to that. But this is to be just kind of a nice additional episode about mental health and particularly about our cultural, and racial ethnic experiences within Black Haitian American community, as we live out achieving good mental health.
Hmm.
Yeah. Anything you want to say, babe, before we wrap
Nope.
this up?
Nope. I think we're all wrapped up here. So thanks for joining us this week, and we'll see you guys next.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment or a question in the comments section. Make sure to like this video if you in fact enjoyed it, and feel free to subscribe as well so that you get some notifications about our future videos. Thanks so much, and see you next time.
See ya.
Peace.